Jump off that exhausting hamster wheel and into balanced living with Dr. Marissa.
Promise you joy in the mystery.
Dr. Marissa, also known as the Asian Oprah. Her mission, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Her purpose, to be your personal advocate to live, laugh, love, learn. Her life motto, don't die wondering. Take back your life with Dr. Marissa Pay.
And welcome. You are tuned to my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced, get happy with Dr. Marissa every Friday, drive time, prime time at 3 p.m. in the afternoon here in Southern California and everywhere you are, thanks to technology and broadcasting out of my beautiful KCAA studio. It's a CNBC, NBC News Radio channel, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5, covering over 5 million homes in Southern California. But again, thanks to Spotify and Spreaker and Stitcher and iHeartRadio and iTunes, and I could stand here for another 56 minutes with all the places that we are going to be. We're just everywhere. And my show's about hope and happiness. So there's no gossip and no scandal. There's no talking about things that we really can't change, frustrating ourselves and others, but it's a message of hope and happiness. And so I have guests and topics to that end. If you've missed any of them, my interviews with Potsy from Happy Days, the beloved Marianne from Gilligan's Island, who just passed. So many different great guests. Fran Drescher talking about how you can prevent cancer. All of those are on my YouTube channel. We are migrating over there, so please do subscribe and enjoy the free shows about hope and happiness. And today is no exception. I am delighted to have with me in studio, streaming live from the United Kingdom. So those of you who don't know where that is, London, England, I'm so grateful to have him. Saf Buxy. And I probably should have asked you how to pronounce that correctly beforehand, but he's a recovered addict, a victim of abuse and trauma, social behavioral mentor, author, professional speaker, addiction psychologist, radio and talk show host, but above all, a survivor. His recently published book, Out of the Madness, A Message of Hope, is a story about abuse and how to survive it and how he survived it. It's a story of the fallout and damage that abuse causes over time as the victim tries to cope. This book will truly transform your life. Please welcome to my studio, Saf. Now, I didn't pronounce that right, did I?
You know what, Dr. Marissa, thanks for having me. You pronounced it beautifully. Saf Buxy. You said Buxy, right? Was it?
Buxy.
Yeah, it was great.
Saf Buxy. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. That was gangster. I love that. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, welcome to the studio, the virtual studio, of course. Streaming. What time is it over there in England?
It's 5:10 now, PM. So it's
so
all dark. You can see, you can see. It's all
yeah,
dark.
yeah. So what's in my future? You're like ahead of me.
Lockdown in the UK. Everything is in lockdown, so there's not much of a future in the UK. But yeah. But I mean, so
challenging time. So let's start at the beginning, like I like to do. And you shared in your introduction with me that you are someone like me, the 7 out of 10 of us who have had childhood abuse, and you have obviously used that pain to chisel yourself into the person you are today, and you're helping others with that same circumstance and also with addiction, some of which I'm guessing come out of a past of abuse. So speak to all of that and just tell me what happened early that set you on this track and journey.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into that, Dr. Marissa. I'd just like to say thank you very much for having me on this wonderful show. It's been a long time coming, and I really, I feel blessed, and I've got so much gratitude right now, and I feel excited because I think, we're in alignment in so many things, like you mentioned earlier. So, we share the same love. We said, the love of connection, the love of healing, and the love of this opportunity that we can be a voice for the voiceless. And again, I'd like to thank you for having me there. You know what, we've been going through some crazy times in the last year or so, and well, for as long as I can remember, really. And this is where I see a commonality with myself, with yourself, and many people out there, because we're talking about the fight against injustice, and that is what I do today. And the reason why I've come to the place where I am today is purely because of people ignoring mental health, people ignoring indigenous rights, ignoring addiction, and because of all these things. I can go on about homelessness and gender inequality and racism, but it's all about exploitation, full stop. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the fight against injustice. And I think as humanity, we've become very disconnected. I've been causing chaos most of my life. I've been selfish. I've been hard to live with.
So let's go back to that. So I wanted you to go right to the beginning, only so we can get to where you are now. So
Yeah.
You were a child that went through violence yourself, is what I'm hearing. And at what age was that?
I mean, if we start from the very beginning, I was adopted at birth, and obviously through my studies and research psychologically, of course, that's played a massive part in the way my life turned out with the initial abandonment. As soon as I was delivered, I was in an incubator because I was 2.5 months premature. And then as soon as I came out of the incubator, my second abandonment in very quick time, I was with the adoptive parents, who were a loving family, loving parents. But obviously that maternal and paternal bond was never there. And obviously, as a child, you feel that. But I think where the abuse really started was when I was 11 years old, and I was sent away to boarding school. And Dr. Marissa, I experienced racial abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse at times, emotional abuse, humiliation, near enough every day for 6 years of my life. So basically from the age of 11 to 17. And no child should have to go through that, really. But and I don't know how I got through it. Well, I do. I saw this brilliant strategy, and it's called alcohol, and that sort of got me through what I was going through at the time, and that's from the age of 11. So that's how it started, I think.
So would you say that addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, is for many people an attempt to cope with the kinds of pain, abuse that you had? Is that because you work in the field now, is there a number? I didn't look it up. I don't know if you could even say, what percent of people who were under the throes of addiction had abuse as a child, but I've always wondered about that connection.
Yeah, obviously at the time you don't know, but through the research and upon reflection, with my clients today and the clients when I worked with when I was working in the prison service as a drug and alcohol practitioner, with working with some offenders who did some serious crimes in the community, and all the work that I do, 100% of the clients that I work with have suffered some kind of trauma or abuse.
Okay.
Not to say everyone who suffered or experienced abuse or trauma becomes an addict, but
Right.
every single person that I've worked with or have come across in addiction has experienced some kind of trauma.
Yeah, and I'm glad I asked you that question. That is hurt people, right? We've heard that. That's very true. And I'm not saying, for those of you who are like, oh, that's just an excuse. You have a choice. You shouldn't be drinking. You shouldn't be, creating havoc, as you were saying. You have a responsibility. It doesn't matter what your past has been. Doesn't matter. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just move on. Saying that alcoholism is a disease, it's just a cop out. These are all the things, these are all the BS, the belief systems that are running around that are not helping. Whether however true you think those are, it's not helping. So when you were creating Havoc, what were some of the things that you tried to do in order to alleviate all of that angst?
Well, I mean, obviously, alcohol was the first drug of choice that came into my life, because it was the easiest available drug, and it is a drug. And I mean, of course, at the time, I didn't know I was doing it because of an escape, or people call it coping mechanism. I mean, since learning different modalities, I call it a brilliant strategy, and that's what I used to basically get through what I was going through and to get ready for what I was going to go through for the following week. It was
Right.
a combination of fear and survival, but it was also I felt accepted when I did drink. But you know what? When I left boarding school, because as I said, I was I haven't said, but I was in the junior army. Everything's in my book in greater detail, because I think it's important for people to know that you could be so down in your life, and seemingly there can be no way out, no way back, but you can get out of this. And that's the whole idea of my book, Out of the Madness, a message of hope, because the book is about giving a message of hope to people, not just people who've suffered through the realms of addiction, but people who've suffered trauma or anything really. You can get out of anything. So that's what the point of the book is. But when I got into adult life, Dr. Marissa, my life went to another level, went to a different level, because I left boarding school at 17 after suffering sexual, physical, racial abuse. Again, I go into detail quite a bit in the book. At the age of 18, that was when I found out I was adopted. So I didn't know. So it felt like the first 18 years of my life was just a lie. And then my addiction went to another level. So after coming out of that abuse at school for 6 years, from the age of 11, I come home to my family and I find out I'm adopted. It was like another kick in the teeth. And then,
Did they tell you, or did you find out by accident?
They told me. No, they told me.
They wanted to wait until you were 18.
It looks like it, yeah. It looks like it, yeah.
So not taking away from the pain of it. So was there some recognition that, yes, it was terrible that you didn't have your bio parents, but that you said they were a loving family. So were they able, what was their reaction to all of your stuff?
They were initially scared on what I would think, and I would possibly not love them as much as I did. And that didn't really happen, but it was still a big shock. It was a massive shock. I always knew there was something. No, I had no siblings. All my cousins, adoptive cousins, if you like, looked like their parents. I didn't. So there's always something there. But when someone actually tells you something at the age of 18, after going through all that drama that I went through at boarding school, it was a massive shock. But
can I ask you a sensitive question? Is your skin color the same as your parents?
Yeah, exactly. So they're both passed away now, but they're from India. They're Indian origin, and they follow the Islamic faith. So I was brought up, if you like, as an Indian, and learnt a lot about the Islamic faith. And obviously, that's the religion that I know the most about. Even though I'm quite spiritual today, and I'm into many beliefs and religions and spirituality and stuff like that. So I'm not just with Islam; I'm with a lot of things, but. Yeah, so that side of it, the complexion, there was no conspiracy there, but it was obviously once I found out when I was 18, it was like wow. And you know what I did? I left the house and I drank a bottle of vodka. I took some speed. I think I had some cocaine that night, and I slept rough.
Because it numbs out all of the stuff. I mean, that's the upside or the downside of addiction is if you don't like what's going on in your life, and if you don't like what's going on in your head, here's a way out. I've heard it said of addicts and alcoholics that, alcohol and the drugs were not the problem. They were my solution. They were able to take away the dis-ease that I had with life. And if you just tuned in and you're wondering who the handsome gentleman on my screen is today, he's someone who actually had me on his show. We'll talk a little bit about his media in the United Kingdom, but his name is Saf Buxy, and he is the author of a book that's just come out called Out of the Madness, A Message of Hope. And he's sharing with us some pretty personal stuff about how he became an addict and an alcoholic, basically from a myriad of trauma growing up, adopted, as well as, abused emotionally, physically in boarding school, and finding a solution in a numbing agent, which, by the way, Forbes, I just read, during the pandemic is up over 17% of overdoses, which is a significant increase. So even if you have not had a significant abuse in your life, I mean, there's some that say that COVID, people are going the pandemic fatigue into PTSD in some ways. If you're one of the people who lost everything, where your stimulus check means nothing because you've lost everything. Certainly this last year, it qualifies as something that you would want to just escape from. So all right. So now you are creating havoc by drowning yourself in this stuff. What happened? What was your turning point?
Oh, when I got a new way of life? Oh, that was many years later, Dr. Marissa. I mean, the mayhem literally went on, well, from the time I started to drink to the time I actually finished abstinent from drink, drugs, gambling, the whole gangster life that I was involved with. It was 33 years of chaos. There was 33 years from chaos.
So that's why the madness is capitalized in your book. Out of the madness, it's 33 years of madness. It was not just, and I forgot to mention, if you are listening or watching right now, either on my YouTube channel or on the Facebook, please do in the comment section, say hello, ask any questions you have to my guest, and that way we can give you a peace in, peace out. So I know some of Saf's friends already messaged me saying we'll be tuning in. So just write in the comment section and I can get it right here on the side. All right, go ahead. Sorry, I just wanted
No, of course, yeah. So it was, I mean, just to maybe put 20 years in a nutshell, my drinking went to drugs, went to start off with cannabis and went to cocaine. I became a massive cocaine addict for about 15 years. I was a cannabis addict for 17 years. In addition to all that, I was gambling a lot. I was gambling all my money away. I lived in Los Angeles. I was an actor. I mean, it's all in the book. Yeah.
I thought you did all this on the other side of the ocean. So you were actually in my backyard doing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I became a crackhead in Hollywood. I was smoking 5-6 bones a day in Hollywood. Looking at the Hollywood Hills sign with a guy called Richard, whose brother Eric was a Crip gangster. I was involved in that life. Everywhere I went, I was attracted to the life that people don't normally attracted to, but it was something that I wanted. I you know what, Dr. Marissa, when I reflect back, it was like the abused became the abuser. You know what I'm saying? Not that I abused the same way as I.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't kill anybody, did you?
Sorry? No. Not that I abused anyone the same way I got abused. It was more about having control. It was more about being around people who I perceived to have power, who I perceived to have respect because of their violence, because of their lifestyle. And I embraced it. But with that came the drink and the drugs and the gambling and the whole toxicity that came with it. So as I say, from cocaine to alcohol to MDMA, speed, cannabis, but the drug that really grabbed me, and I only did that for the last 5 years of my using, was crystal meth.
Mm.
Crystal meth, it took away my soul. It robbed me. I took away my integrity, my morality, my serenity, everything. It just grabbed me like no other. I mean, all drugs, make you do things out of character, but crystal meth took it to a different level. To a different level.
Yeah, I've never tried it. So tell me why. Like, I know what it is to be drunk, and I've dabbled. But what's different about crystal meth that takes away your soul?
I mean, if we look at food, cocaine, and crystal meth, eating food gives you a little bit of a dopamine rush. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Cocaine's probably about 100 times more of a dopamine rush than food. Crystal meth's about 1,000 times more than cocaine.
So you feel good. You feel like good and high and invincible quickly.
Definitely. Invincible is the one. Invincible is the one. Indestructible. You don't really care. You do things that you would definitely not do if you weren't intoxicated on crystal meth. Things totally out of delving in the realms of the unethical, you uncharacteristic. It's some of the, when I reflect back to what I was doing, I mean, I was involved in robberies, I was involved in violence,
Did you get
gambling.
caught? Did you get caught?
For the robbery, I did, but that's about it, really. I mean, again, it's all in the book.
Did you serve
no,
time?
no, not really. I mean, I've been in plenty of police cells, or jails, as you would call it. But I was released very, very quickly.
Okay.
Either, you know what? There's a lot of things that I believe that the police thought that I was involved with, and I think because of that, they let me go many times because they wanted to catch me on something bigger. But really, I wasn't really doing it, even because of the people I was used to hang around with. I mean, they were known gangsters in London. People with with pretty big reputations, and because I was moving with them, they obviously wanted to catch me doing something bigger. So I did get let off a lot of things as well. But in terms of the robbery, I basically robbed my family.
All right, so let's move out of the havoc now and go into some good news and solution. So what happened?
Well, it was in Berlin, in Germany, because throughout all this, I always maintained to have decent jobs. Obviously, I had to pay for my drugs and my lifestyle, so I needed the money to come in.
Yeah, that's something. Yeah. What do you do? What was your job? I'm curious.
Exactly. I did so many things. I had a property company. I was an asset manager. I was in hospitality, and all. I mean, in terms of property company, the money was extremely good.
Like real estate?
Real estate, yeah. Real estate.
Got it.
Commercial and residential. And but when I was an asset manager with this company, we went to Berlin to look at some assets, and I got very, very drunk and very drugged up, and I had an argument with my boss at the time, and I got arrested for an altercation that I really don't know what happened because I was off my face. But I got arrested. I got released, and I came back on the plane, and my boss inevitably fired me. The week before that, I was arrested at my home, and in between that, I spent maybe about £20,000 on my wife's money. Anyway, I'm telling you all this because when I arrived back to London, my daughter, who didn't like me very much at that time, she had already called a rehabilitation place for me to go to. I think they had enough. So the Monday after, they took me to the rehab place, and Dr. Marissa, I can honestly tell you, I had no intention to stop what I was doing. I was just going there to fly the flag. I was just there to represent, keep them sweet, just doing what they wanted me to do. But when I got into that place and I got into that room with that key worker, I broke down for like 20 minutes. I was done.
So you just popped in a wife and a child very quickly there that I didn't see coming. So in all of this havoc that you were in,
Oh,
you got married and you had a child, and
I
that
had
didn't
2
stop
children.
you. You had 2 children,
No,
and
yeah,
none of this stopped you. And they like, so you, in some ways, you were able to keep a really good job and get married and have 2 children. So there's some level of function. They call it functioning alcoholic. You were a functioning alcoholic drug addict. Is that accurate?
that is accurate. I mean, you know
Okay.
what? Addiction does not discriminate. Okay, and
Uh-huh.
it comes in many forms. You know,
Right.
people have this preconceived impression of an addict to be unaspiring and apathetic, maybe someone of pitiable hygiene,
Mm-hmm.
whose life solely revolves around the addiction. And
That
I
was
can
not it. Mm-hmm.
That was not me. No, I mean there were times, obviously, when I was sleeping rough, the hygiene and the clothes, didn't look great. But the stereotype of an addict, it should be dispelled because it can get anyone, whether you've got a big bank balance, no bank balance, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, whether you're homeless, whether you're unemployed, it will grab anyone,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you've suffered some kind of trauma or abuse, or you're trying to get away from something, or you're disconnected, or you're looking for something else, or something's missing in your life, whatever it may be, because it
All
all comes
right.
down to connection. I,
Yeah.
I don't even call it addiction anymore. I call it connection or bonding. Let's not
Mm-hmm.
call it addiction. Let's call it connection or bonding. And I connected with drink and drugs and gambling for 33 years of my life.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. A very strong connection. An
Extremely
obsessive
strong.
connection. Yes.
Yeah.
So you're still married,
I'm still married. I've still got my 2 children with me.
and your
They,
children, one of them was instrumental in setting all this up. How old was she at the time?
at the time, she was finishing her A levels, so 16, 17 years old.
Smart enough to know something's wrong with dad. He needs a rehab. And I don't care if he's going to sing, I don't want to go to rehab. He's going to rehab. You get there, you break down 20 minutes, you find your soul, right? You in 12-step program, I know it's called, you conceded to your innermost self that you were an alcoholic. And then what happened?
I was in the whole year I was in recovery. I didn't work. I focused on my recovery. I focused on my rehabilitation. I studied a lot about addiction. I read a lot. I did a lot of volunteering for the same charity that took me in. So I was giving back whilst I was there. Of course, I followed the 12-step modality at that time, and then with the volunteering and the studying, and I trained with Dr. John D. Martini, who of course I think you know. I trained social behavior with him. I do a lot of work, with TJ Woodward, of course you know very well. Hi TJ, if you're watching live or whenever you're going to watch. Yeah, yeah. I studied the works of Professor Bruce Alexander, Dr. Gabor Mate, did a master's in addiction psychology, and then I found myself working in the field of addiction, and I worked as an apprentice in a lifers prison. Out of all places, my first job in the drug and alcohol services was in the lifers prison, where I worked with.
Now, lifers prison is people who are on death row. Is that what a lifers prison is?
Yeah, no, we don't have death row in this country, so it's people who are serving a minimum life, or who are serving a life imprisonment, but they have
Okay.
a minimum term. So sometimes that could be 15 years. So they could
Okay.
be out before, depending on. So yeah, but I was working and trying to help some serious offenders, and we're talking
Mhm.
from sex offenders to murderers, to big time drug traffickers, human traffickers, and it was it was an experience. And I want to say this one story very quickly, if I may. I remember my first client in prison who was a sex offender, and I remember meeting him, and it was very hard for me to do. And what kept me going was because whether we like it or not, he was going to get released.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could play some small part in maybe saving another small young lady or young girl or young man or young boy's life by helping this guy through the work, that's what got me through it. But I remember when I did the first initial triage with him, and he shook my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and I went upstairs to my office, and I must have washed my hands for like 5-10 minutes. Everything but bleach was going, because I just sort of felt really disgusted shaking a sex offender's hand. But and I remember that really vividly, what happened, because I was there. It got me through it, because my work could possibly save someone's life in the future. But shaking that guy's hand was, I was disgusted, actually. But then the job, I was in that job for a reason. So I worked in the prison service for a year and a half, and then I worked in the community. I worked in the community and helping people in the community. I got myself a radio show called Saf Surgery, where I talk about addiction, trauma, mental health. While all this is happening, I'm still studying. I'm still working in the community.
Mm-hmm. So you made a right turn, so to speak, out of 33 years of chaos and madness, addicted to numbers of things. And now you took all of that and you turned it back on yourself and back on others in a positive way, which is commendable. And also, I have said this before, that when we are specifically hurt in certain ways, it alchemizes us and carves us and qualifies us to help people in a way that we're good at, because we really understand it in a way that no one who just went to school for it can understand it. So commendable that you did that. And we're going to take a quick break to thank the sponsors who make the show possible. We'll be back with Saf Buxy and his story of Out of Madness, a message of hope, on Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa. We'll be back in 2 and 2. Peace in, peace out. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of this like-minded, happy, balanced hope show, please do contact me with very affordable rates. We'll be right back.
Dr. Marissa here, ready to drive a car that was designed with you in mind? Using patented technology, Mazda is focused on creating a human-centric vehicle, and Capistrano Mazda is ready to put you in the driver's seat. Family-owned and operated, Capistrano Mazda gives you a mileage guarantee. When you buy your new Mazda, you become part of their family. So visit capomazda.com today like I did, and now I can't stop smiling with my fabulous new Mazda MX-5 convertible Miata.
And it's time for Wait a Minute with Dr. Marissa. And today, yes, I'm going there. It is very apparent that the Chinese flu and Kung flu comments and in the absence of greatness, pettiness prevails, has declared open season on discrimination for Asian Americans. The bad news is it's happening all over. The good news is we all know when you figure out that something is undeniably wrong, then we can begin to move towards figuring out how to make it stop or change it or make it better. So that's the good news. And so if you tune in next Friday on my show, we're going to have one dedicated to Stop API Hate, as well as tune in today.
And that is today. And you are tuned in to my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get happy, get balanced with Dr. Marissa. Every Friday drive time, prime time at 3 p.m. Home to Dave Ramsey and the Asian Oprah, AM 1050, FM 102.3, FM 106.5. streaming on demand everywhere. iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it, it's there. Tune in. If you are interested in how to take the mandatory pain in life, knowing that suffering is optional, and today's guest, Saf Buxy, is a great example of that. We've just spent the first half of the show maneuvering through some chaos that you have lived, and now you are taking all of that work or experience and helping those. You did mention the washing your hands with the sex offender. So I know that there are people out there who say, you know, I can forgive pretty much anything, but people who are sex offenders, especially of those of children, and you hear stories in prison, there's that, even in prison, there's a pecking order, so to speak. And so people who are sex offenders of children, look out, because you might just get taken out. And what you were saying about washing your hands seems to suggest that you also have that. Have you had people who are sex offenders rehabilitate, or that gentleman you were just talking about, was he able to understand that hurt people, and that his experiences, maybe as a child, being sexually abused, which is a high percentage of sex offenders, to finish that story?
Yeah. The answer to your question, yes. There's a lot of clients that I saw who were in jail, in prison for sex offences, who did have some kind of abuse to them when they were growing up. Again, there's not a reason to do it, but that was quite a familiar pattern. But with this particular gentleman, the first one I saw, he had no remorse. In fact, he didn't even think he did anything wrong. There's one question that I always used to ask, which is part of the triage form, is that do you think you've ever hurt anyone? And nearly every other prisoner that I spoke to, whether they're murderers or drug dealers or whatever, they all said yes. He said no. So then I had to say to him, well, what about the reason why you're in? And he goes, well, I don't think so. So it was like a shock hearing this, that this particular sex offender had showed no remorse at all and didn't think that he hurt anyone. But yeah, on the whole, with the other sex offenders that I worked with thereafter, most of them did experience some kind of sexual abuse themselves, or some kind of trauma to that effect growing up. Yeah. So
two things. Then there is hope. There is even hope for rehabilitation of sex offenders.
There is.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, it's not what you do. It's not what they do whilst they're in prison, or whilst they're in rehab, or whilst they're in a place where there's treatment. It's what happens once they're out of that environment. It's the after plan that is so key, that has to be in place, and that is not in place. Same with addiction, same with prisons, treatment facilities. Once they're out of this place where everything's going well, that's why there's such a big relapse rate in everything, because the aftercare. Yeah, the aftercare is not there, and that's the bit where, in my work, of course, I work as a mentor and as a coach with people in addiction and trauma. But I try and get the people who are highly educated, who are great individuals, who want to go to the next level, the aftercare level, the level where, you know what, they need something better now. They need something different to keep them on the straight path, and that's where I come in.
Great. So, I mean, we've got young people who, and now we're in this, I don't want to get on my soapbox. My daughter will kill me. But, the legalization of some of the drugs that are out there now as well. Is addiction just something that is just going to be like, there's really no, it's just something, people experiment, people try things. and then it's just one of the, 2 out of 10 people are going to get addicted, or whatever the statistic is. 42.7% of statistics are made up on the spot. I've always liked that joke. But sorry, aside, like, what is your message as far as addiction and alcoholism and people who feel like it is a solution, or it's not that big of a deal, or is there hope? I know there are people watching right now who don't understand why their husband, friend, child, sister, brother is an addict or an alcoholic and cannot get out of that addiction. What is there some comfort here? Is there some message that you give?
As Dr. Gabor Mate said, it's not why the addiction, it's why the pain. I'm not sold on the fantasy where they say it's about the chemical hooks in the drink or the drug. If that's the case, then we'll all be addicts. It all comes down to addiction, and it all comes down to connection, and it all comes down to bonding, and it all comes down to something missing. It all comes down to something missing in your life, whether it's because of trauma, whether it's because of abuse, whatever it's because there's disconnection somewhere. But just to give you a quick thing, there was in Vietnam, the Vietnamese War, okay, 20% of the American soldiers, 20% were smoking and injecting heroin on a daily basis at the Vietnam War, okay?
While in the war, not when they came back.
No, in the war. And that was it. The American government were like thinking, wow, when the war ends, we're going to have all these junkies on the street. You know, when the war ended, not one of them overdosed. 95% got clean. 5%, went to rehab. Why? Because they were back with connected lives. They were back with their family. They were back with their home, their children. They were back in their environment, back working. The trauma of the war, the disconnection from their families and their friends and their children and whatever it may be, what they saw, the PTSD and everything that comes with, 20% were heroin addicts. When they came away from that environment and came to an environment of security, of comfort, of connection, of love, 95% just stopped straight away. 5% went to rehab. No one overdosed, hardly.
What study was that?
Oh, it was the American Psychological Studies, something like that. Yeah.
So the connection piece, and I've been doing some work on this for mental health matters, right? That during this time, the most important thing is to not feel isolated. You may be isolated, but the feeling of isolation can be remedied by reaching out, by connecting, your strategy of connection. But my persona stands up and says, however, there are kids, and I know parents who have loved their children and provided them with such connection, and they had connection, and yet they still chose a road of just heartbreaking addiction and heartbreaking alcoholism. So that's where it breaks down a little, because they had the connection. So why did they go down that route?
See, trauma comes in different forms. I mean, I don't like saying big T trauma, little t trauma. Trauma is trauma, whatever's personal to you. And there are varying degrees of trauma as well. But when children get involved or something, obviously peer pressure is a big thing. I see it day in, day out with peer pressure. And then they like it. But the question is, why do they do it more than some other people? Because there is some kind of disconnection. There is something that they're running away from. There is something that is comforting them. And it could be down to fear. It could be down to survival. It could be down to the friends that they're with. But whatever it is, something is missing at home. Yes, we're not saying my parents love me. My parents love me. I mean, but as soon as I walked at that door, they had no idea what was happening. They had no idea about the abuse that I was experiencing. They had no idea about the bullying that I was going through. They had no idea that I was doing what I was doing to be accepted. And I think that's what children of this day and age, young kids who get involved in drink and drugs and the gang life, unfortunately, is because it's attracted to them. It's something that you're either in or you'll be ridiculed. You're either in or you'll be bullied. That's trauma right there. So they want to get connected that way by doing the drink and drugs, regardless of what's happening at home.
Interesting. So the connection point could be different, is what you're saying. They're still going after connection, but it's a different place. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And we don't know. I mean, what the childhood was like. The father might have been away quite a lot, so he wasn't present. The parents might have been arguing quite a lot. It's not so much the trauma; it's how they experienced the trauma. Okay, it's not so much. It's not the act itself; it's the experience of the act. They could have been shouted out, or they could have said, "Oh, you know, you're not clever enough," or they compare you to your cousins. It could be anything, and they found solace or a solution or a brilliant strategy through drink and drugs.
Interesting. So, how do people find your book?
Well, I thought you never asked, Dr. Marissa. I thought you never asked.
But I keep you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. No, guys, it's an incredible book. It took me 2.5, 3 years to write it. I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to write this. Not because just to give my story out there, but to give a message of hope, because you can come out of it. And some of the stories are horrific. Some of the stories, and it's quite a witty book as well. So you can find the book. Go to my website, of course, www.safbuxy.com. Click on the books link, and it's got all the details how to get the book. And please, if you do read the book, please write a review. It'd be good to have some feedback on what you think. But I can guarantee you it will transform your life. You'll learn something different. So give it a go, because it's a wonderful book, even though I say so myself.
And you are, which is good. So I'm just going to change the ticker so that they can see. It's
www.safbuxy.com, and
and you can get your book there.
Click on the books.
Yeah, perfect.
But it's a free gift. There's a free gift with it as well, but I won't tell you what it is until it's at the back of the book. So it's a lovely little free gift as well. So yeah, definitely.
Great. There's on the ticker tape is how you can get a hold of the book, and also a free gift. So I always ask my guests, the last question is, to who or to what are you most grateful to or for?
God. I'm grateful to the power greater than myself, the higher power. I choose to call him God, because without God, and of course my family thereafter, who supported me throughout everything, but I had to sort of surrender. I'm not a religious person per se, but I had to surrender to something bigger than me, better than me, because I had to quit playing God myself. And so I, first and foremost, God, and it's not a religious God, it's more of a spiritual God, but I do believe in God, and I'm thankful and grateful to God.
Yeah, beautiful. And thank you so much, Saf, for coming on the show.
I love that.
Yeah, you like that? That's my, my peace in, peace out, world peace through inner peace. That's all that. But thank you so much for coming to the studio, streaming all the way from London, England. And go to safbuxy.com, get your copy of his book with all of the stories, so that you can see you're not alone. If you're one of the people who are, using drugs and alcohol as a way to connect, it might work for a little while, but it's probably going to break down at some point. And I'm sure he's got solution in the book as well, in how to work with whatever you think you're missing. So thank you so much, Saf, for coming to my studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, and it's time for the end of the show, which is my balance bar, which I invite you to join me in places that I'm going to be. And I'm actually going to be speaking at the end of this month. And this is in Hawaii. I was supposed to be speaking there last year. I ended up speaking on virtual platform. I missed out on an all expense paid trip to Hawaii, and I am missing it again. They decided to do it virtual, which is totally understandable. But you can sign up. It's a great, very timely conference, the Institute for Violence, Abuse, and Trauma. So go ahead and register for that. If you just go and Google IVAT, you'll see the registration link. And I have a little something to show you right now. Let's take a deep breath in and release. Peace, comfort, love, peace of mind, peace of heart to all those who are suffering right now as a result of the horrific murders in Georgia, and all of the more than the numbers escaping me, as I've 38 or over 3,800 people who have suffered just discrimination and prejudice just because they look like me. They look Asian, are Asian, and it really is time. We have to stop the hate. So this is actually something that was put together. Let's see, we put this together, I think in April, the ACMA, Asian Cultural Media Alliance Advisory Board, which I'm honored to be on, and Kathleen Choi put this together. So I just want us to have it. Please share it. Right now is the most important time.
Our world as we know it has changed.
Hate crimes against Asian Americans related to COVID-19 have increased significantly.
These crimes have grown out of unfounded fear, blame, and even ignorance.
We must face this challenge together and not let fear and hate divide us.
Our country is built on the foundations of tolerance and compassion for others.
These crimes go against the very principles we stand for and will not be tolerated.
Those responsible for committing these crimes will be held accountable for their actions.
We must stay strong during these challenging times and not let ignorance and fear tear us apart.
Together, we will not only stop this disease, but also stop the disease of racism.
Stand against hate.
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 And that's a very sobering.
Hate crimes and discrimination against Asian Americans related to the COVID-19.
And that's a sobering message. I want all of us to take it seriously. I am dedicating an entire show next week and have contacted some, I'm hoping to get someone from Stop AAPI Hate to be here with me in studio. It is very important, not just because I'm Asian, but it's really interesting. People say, why did it take so long for media to even start talking about this? I signed the petition months ago, and what people they don't like to talk about group differences because it's stereotyping, but the reality is there are group differences. And for me, as an Asian American, I grew up with the saying, the nail that stands up is hammered down. So you don't talk about things. You don't say things that are wrong. You don't talk about what is being done to you. You don't do that. And when you do, you get in trouble. So this like George Floyd, this is not just a problem for the race that is affected. This is a problem for all of us who are humankind, with the emphasis on kind. So join me next week for the show that's going to look at what is going on right now and just all of the ways in which we can have a helping hand in ending hate for all races. But in particular, the highlight right now is on Asian Americans. So That's it for today. I'm so glad that you joined me. I just saw Cheryl Ward. Yay. Just checked in here. Physical connection may mask real connection. We're talking soul-to-soul connection. Everyone wants acceptance and to be seen. Absolutely. That was the theme for today's show, and I'm so grateful that you joined me today. Remember, it's all about balance. This is Dr. Marissa reporting live from Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced, get happy with Dr. Marissa. Peace in, peace out. World peace through inner peace. Have the best week ever. Oh, and don't forget, go to Mondays. I'm broadcasting live. And make sure if you shop on Amazon that you use 8 Ways to Happiness on Smile so that my nonprofit that helps children with more happiness gets a little love from Amazon. All right, and that's it.
Well, she has been dubbed the Asian Oprah, and she just wants all of us to be happy.
Dr. Marissa, aka the Asian Oprah, says the most important thing you can choose is choosing to be happy.
You are tuned into my weekly talk radio TV show called Take My Advice. I'm not using it. Get balanced with Dr. Marissa.
That's the idea for Dr. Marissa Pay's new book called 8 Ways to Be Happy.
Many of us say, I am my own worst critic. Nobody's harder on me than I am. And my response to that is, stop it! Why are you doing that to yourself? You have to be your biggest fan, because if you can't at the end of the day say, I did a good job, who is? We don't have to constantly be angry at the things that are wrong. Why don't we choose to be happy about things that are right? We have the choice. That's our muscle. And life is so amazing if we can see it.